Business leaders meeting with President-elect Trump this week in Mar-a-Lago. It includes the CEOs of SoftBank, TikTok, Netflix, and then just last night, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Joining us right now is Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, Yale School of Management Senior Associate Dean for Leadership Studies, also a CNBC contributor after putting together a tour de force of a CEO conference yesterday that had everybody from Tim Cook to Albert Bourla to Mark Benioff and so many others. How many people, 200?
We had 200. And it was our 150th CEO Summit since we actually launched the concept. As obvious as it was to create a school for the boss, nobody had done this before. Forbes, Fortune, Business Week, the World Economic Forum, Davos was started years later. So we were the first, and we still are the only truly non-commercial educational event. And
so I was there for part of it. Tell me what you think was the biggest surprise for you.
One of them was that they showed up. A number of their boards told them, this is really dangerous. As CEOs are being targeted, you're on playing cards, you're on posters, wanted posters.
And it was literally, by the way, I should say, across the street from where Brian Thompson was shot, physically, literally.
That is absolutely true. I accidentally lied to them. I told them we were 50 paces away from where the murder took place. Turns out we were, as Mayor Adams showed us, we were actually closer than that.
Right. And Mayor Adams was there.
It was Mayor Adams was there. It was a statement of defiance that they were there. They made a strong statement. Several of them changed board meetings. Robert Isom of American Airlines left his board meeting to be with us in part to make that statement that they were not going to be frightened away or intimidated by standing up for leadership and American character and not sort of the endorsements of this populist fringe or power.
Have they changed their behavior, their security? I mean,
yes, they've dramatically ramped up. It's shocking that these people had only 20% of them had personal security, Becky. I would have thought it was much higher myself. And I'm sure you guys never get any hate mail, but you know, I'm flooded with nutcases. Most of it was depending on what kind of a mud wrestling situation I get in with Joe. I'd hear sometimes more from the right. These days, I'm hearing much more from the left coming after me, so I'm doing something right. I guess you feel the same way if you get criticized by both. But the threats, the death threats, have open postings asking for my assassination, and this is just me. The CEOs are getting. 3 of them with us yesterday were wearing bulletproof vests domestically. They wear bulletproof vests when they travel internationally. It was shocking that they wore them. One of them bragged he's lost a lot of weight recently, and it wasn't noticeable that he had a puffed-up vest on. That's just sitting in a ballroom.
Right. Let me ask you, you do polls throughout the day, which are fascinating because you actually effectively anonymously poll these 200 CEOs about their perspectives on things like taxes, on things like tariffs. You had a fascinating poll that you did on the nomination of RFK Jr., for example, and whether he's a threat to public health, which a majority, I believe, of the CEOs said he was. What were the most interesting findings of those polls to you?
I'm glad you caught that one. The overall theme was looking back. It was the Roaring 20s, lessons from the 1920s, late 1920s for the late 2020s. And it seems like such an obvious theme. I'm surprised nobody's gone for that before. And there are many ways where they felt we're better off than we were then. Income disparity was much worse then than it is now, believe it or not, despite the hand-wringing of many of the populists on this theme. But they were mixed on a lot of issues in Trumponomics. They were favorable, slightly favorable to the idea, as Joe will be happy to know, about using tariffs as a bargaining cudgel, about 56%, but that's not a 90%. It still was a mixed vote. RFK, I was surprised, including somebody who'd met with him recently, walked away confused. The 65% thought he's a threat to public health. I think the idea of the tax cuts for domestic manufacturing, they were in favor of it. They thought that, even though some were skeptical as whether or not the entire supply chain has to be domestic to benefit a cut from 22% to 15%, they thought this could stimulate domestic
What did you think of this one?
investment.
Cryptocurrencies are unsupported by any underlying intrinsic value. This was of the CEOs, of the 200 CEOs, 84% effectively said that they believed that they were unsupported by any underlying value. I thought that was shocking.
I thought it was shocking. I had a series of questions to try to tease something out that I didn't have to do because when I asked them, as you know, we had the largest crypto exchange CEO there in the room and several others, Anthony Scaramucci, Fred Thiel, and all these. is I asked how many of them are using crypto for any daily transactions. 100% of them said zero. I said, have you ever? 100% of them said zero. And then I thought, well, I could skip all the frequency questions. Right. Nobody's using it. And they said I asked them, is it a meme stock? And most of them said yes.
What do you make of all of the trips? We were just talking about Jeff Bezos being down at Mar-a-Lago, and we talked about the number of CEOs that have made their way down there. What do you make of those trips? How different is that historically, or is it?
That's a really great question. In 2016, the strong GOP support that always came from the business community came to a halt. We've studied, going back just to Fortune 100, not Fortune 5, Fortune 100, is roughly half of them, going back to Abraham Lincoln, whether or not it was Taft or Reagan or Ford or, unsuccessful candidates like McCain, Mitt Romney, they already had about half of the U.S. business community of the major companies were out vocally and financially working hard on the campaigns. It hit a wall in 2016. It went to zero. There were two in 2020, and this time until the horrific assassination attempt that brought Elon Musk out on President Trump's life, there became one, and that's quite a change. However, every other time, especially in 2017, I brought President Trump, then he wasn't president, into one of our CEO forums before he won, and the major CEOs, who many of them are mostly still in office now, said if he walks in the room at the Waldorf, we're walking out. And guess what? He walked in, they walked out. And then he had me over to Trump Tower right afterwards, because part of it was showing me that they're all coming by here now, because they did come by in early 2017. And the same reason they're rallying now, Andrew, is regardless of how they felt in the campaign, they're American CEOs that are very patriotic, and they know it's in the nation's interest and the interest of all their stakeholders, especially their shareholders, that this be a very successful president. So they want Trump to succeed, and they want to talk with him. A few of the CEOs who didn't want to go down to Mar-a-Lago, I was surprised, were saying they're very supportive of those who did, even though they wouldn't. They thought it was hypocritical to criticize them.